Our extinction segment, very quickly here. First one is the world population bomb might not go off after all. And the other day we passed the 8 billion mark, November 15 of last year. We passed the 8 billion mark according to one study by the United Nations. And the demographers had a peak inside of 10.4 billion around the year 2080. But a new report, parallel report, says that that may not be true. Says if economic development continues at the current pace, the report still finds that population growth could peak at 8.6 billion in 2050 and fall below 8 billion by 2100. In other words, we're going to peak mid-century and then it's going to be all the way down. That's what they're saying.
And they're not scared about and fall below 8 billion? That doesn't scare anybody?
Yeah, that's one issue.
They say it like it so nonchalantly.
Yeah, a lot of these people are environmentalists or conservationists, and they're looking at the environment and saying, we're destroying the environment. The fewer people, the better. And so when it comes down, they say that's good news. And the question, is that good news? Maybe it is for the environment. Is it good for the economy? That's another issue. But I circled here this other part, which I thought was amusing, because they still haven't gotten a handle on why we're not having children. Education and economic progress have reliably reduced fertility rates in the past. As economic conditions improve for more women, especially in developing countries with the highest fertility rates, they will have fewer children and lead to a quicker decline in global population. And again, these people have no clue whatsoever. No, it's got nothing to do with education.
They're saying educated women make less kids.
Yeah, and I've shown in the past, I'm not going to do that again, but that in the 19th century it was the rich people who had lots of children. And I've got lots of pictures on that. And people can't get their minds wrapped around that because we always put lots of children for women. And that wasn't the case in the 19th century. That's one issue. But there's another issue, and that's that, and I'll tell you a little anecdote, and that'll put it in the right perspective. I was at a house where they had a servant, a woman, and she was severely uneducated. I mean, she was just a person who was looking for a job in the city, and she had a boy, and she would bring the boy with her to the house while she did the chores. And so I asked her if that was her only kid. She said, yeah. And I asked her if she was going to have more. And she told me a little story. She said, my father in our little town, he had like 4, 5, 6 girlfriends, and with each one he had like 5 to 8 kids. So, half the town looked like her because there were like 50 or 60 children that came from the same father, and all these women just had children with him.
Dude's got a lot of alimony to pay.
Yeah, but it turns out she comes to the city, she has this kid, and I said, so how many more are you going to have? She says, no, I'm not going to have another one. I said, why not? She says, no, I got to work and I can barely stay alive as it is, with what I make, etc., etc. And this was an ignorant woman, not educated. And she already knew, from her own skin, her own experience, that she was not supposed to have another kid. In fact, the one she had probably was a mistake. And so here's the rule, okay? It's got nothing to do with education, which is what these people are saying. It's got to do with your urbanization. You come to the city, you stop having children. It's city life that kills children. Cities are not made for children, period. So whenever all these people say, well, we don't know why population is declining or we're not having children, etc., it's because you come to the city. When you come to the city, children stop.
I mean, there's more to it, but you're not going to go into it, right?
Right, but I mean, that's the big picture.
You're making it sound like voodoo. Oh, the cities make you sterile.
As soon as you cross the highway.
My balls shrink. No.
Okay, here's another. Oh, geez, I always get it.
You need a better system than that, but Jesus Christ.
There he goes. Okay. EU chief calls for muscular policy to counter China's alternative world order. We have a new world order, but it's not the one you were thinking of. It's the Chinese new world order. Uh-oh. And this is Ursula von der Leyen, and she says China is pursuing a systemic change of the international order. Okay, and so she recommends, he had a talk the other day, restricting European companies' investments in what? Robotics, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, technology, high technology. They don't want to give the Chinese all that technology because they're going to use it to what? To change the world order. And apparently, according to Lyon, she says an alternative vision of the world order. And what is she referring to? The Communist Party of China. Okay, so she's a little worried about the power that the Chinese are grabbing, the influence. That's one issue, and the other one is the fact that, here they are influencing countries with their money. The other day, they convinced Honduras to cut relations with Taiwan, and now Honduras instead goes with mainland China, recognizes China as the only China, and so on. So they're Chinese are mainland Chinese, right? The communists, they're buying people off with money. And that's what worries people like Ursula, because she says, oh, what they're doing is changing the world order that she has in mind, obviously, versus the one in communist countries. She's not the only one. Here we have Mr. Milley. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he went with his little cup to ask for money from Congress the other day, see if they would contribute to his budget, 2024 budget. And obviously, he had to paint China as a big monster. In fact, I guess the pitch was more or less like, look, I've got a pop gun, and General Lee on the other side, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs in China, he's got a Kalashnikov, he's got an AK-47 against my pop gun. So please give me more money so that these people don't either catch up or surpass us. And so Milley suggested the following, says they have a rational goal to be a global, the global, right? Co-equal with the United States and superior militarily by mid-century. And he says, we have to outpace that. And that will assure what? The peace. Peace through strength.
If I have the biggest gun, we have peace. But if two people have the biggest size guns,
then we don't have peace.
Now we can shoot at each other. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, so he went with his little cub, his little hat, asking for donations, and but just for your information, he wants $1 trillion. And that's up from 800 billion. So he's asking for a quarter increase in the defense budget. So keep that in mind. Where's that money coming from? From God, from heaven? Someone's got to pay for those expenses. That's why, the congressmen, they listen carefully. What do you have to offer? Well, what I have to offer you is scare. Be scared of the Chinese because they're going to take over. And that's the buzzword out there today. Everybody's scared of the Chinese. The yellow fear. It's called the yellow fear. Not the fever, but the fear. Yellow fever was in 19th century. This is the yellow fear. Okay, but is that warranted? And I say it ain't. Okay, and here's why it ain't. Okay, Chinese manufacturing slows in March. Services growth hits 12-year high. What's happening? What's growing in China is services. Okay, there's the expansion of the service sector. What is that? That's travel, entertainment, leisure services, video games, TikTok, all that nonsense. What I call unemployment. Okay, and says that Beijing has set an economic growth target of around 5% for this year, one of its lowest in decades. But Li, the economic minister, has warned it will not be easy to reach that goal. So China's having economic problems. Why? Because it turned a corner. What was it? In 2015, it became, for the first time, a service economy, where services surpassed, for the first time in GDP, manufacturing. Now, not only do you have that, you have also labor. Chinese labor now is mostly services and growing. What's being left behind is manufacturing. Especially if you have people like good old Ursula, who says that they're not going to sell any more high technology to China so that it doesn't accomplish its goal of imposing its version of the new world order, right? And so I think China has turned a corner. It's reached a zenith, right? It'll keep rising, but what I'm saying is becoming asymptotic, its growth. The country that's growing now is India. Why? Because India was so far back, so underdeveloped, that now with the technology available out there, it can grow at a faster rate, but it will also hit a plateau, turn a corner, and become asymptotic. And so, what happens when all the countries in the world become asymptotic in their growth? Then I want to see what happens.
And we all go on the roller.
And if we throw on top of that the fact that population is
Yeah.
also going to turn the corner,
Now we all go. See, right now the roller coaster's getting to the top, and then the wee,
That's
that
gonna be
wee
it.
part.
and I think it's going to be exponential.
It's scary how I was watching a bunch of videos about how, I mean, I told you how also women aren't having kids. This is becoming more and more apparent to everyone.
Yeah.
And that on top of all this is just, it becomes clear that 20 years from now is going to be a very different world, very old world, very uneconomic world.
What's this BS about 20 years?
I mean, assuming we get that far, this is going to get real dystopian real fast.
Yeah, what I think is going to happen is there's going to be an economic crisis. And when, not if, but when that happens, the question is, will money have any value? Will anybody want money? What will be the reason to accept money if nobody else will accept it? You can't unload it onto someone else because they don't want it, so why will you want it? And if you don't want it, we have a problem because nobody will collect salaries. And if nobody collects salaries, nobody works. And if nobody works, we don't produce food. Forget about all the other stuff, the, leisure and vacations, all that stuff. Food is what we need to be alive. And so I say when, not if, but when the economic crisis hits, what I mean by that, money will be no more. Okay, and just in case, just to make your day in an upbeat direction, right? Take it into upbeat. Here we have another problem. The top economist, Mohammed El-Arian, warns that erosion in trust caused by banking crisis will lead to economic contagion. And we had the second and the third biggest bank failures in U.S. history the other day, just a week ago, and they were only beat by the one in 2008 with the housing crisis. Okay, it's a Silicon Valley Bank from California and the Signature Bank of New York. They fell apart. They declared bankruptcy. Okay, and that was a big blow. But did it stop there? No, you had the Credit Suisse bank there taken over by USB. And just in case, the Deutsche Bank is also in trouble. It says after Silicon Valley Bank became the second largest bank of all time to fail, investors and analysts across the world have been sounding alarm bells. Some fear that the entire banking system is still at risk, but many think that the Treasury Department's decision to what? To bail out depositors. So that means now we have the taxpayer bailing out those people who put more than $250,000 in their account, right? Was enough to solve the problem. The crisis raised concerns about the stability of all major banks. But Deutsche Bank, one of the world's largest and most scrutinized financial institutions, is worrying investors more than others. Deutsche Bank was already not in the best shape when the recent banking crisis started. The German banking giant has faced numerous challenges in recent years, with its stock price dropping about 30% in less than 2 months. Despite a small recent rebound, investors remain skeptical about the bank's future prospects. Moreover, Deutsche Bank's interconnectedness with other financial institutions heightens the potential for what? The domino effect that you see there on the left. Should it run into major liquidity issues? So we have banks that are failing, okay? And maybe that should concern you, especially if you have money in the bank. Maybe you don't want to have too much in there. Maybe you want to pull your money out and put it under your pillow because you're probably going to be safer. In Argentina, in, 2001, they did what is known as El Corralito, the corral. And nobody could get their money out for several days. And when they went back, their money was worth 1/3 of what they put in. 1/3. Okay, that's how much it devalued. And so just keep those things in mind. Those poor countries teach us a little lesson that we take into the advanced countries because it could happen there as well. Okay. Anyways, here we have Mr. The same fellow there, El-Arian, and he says risks have shifted from financial to economic contagion. So now we're talking about contagion. Looks like we have a virus out there, an economic virus. Okay. And what he says is this will play out probably in the third and fourth quarter, and it will have a long tail. That's what he predicts. He says there's going to be problems towards the end of the year or second half of the year. And just in case, here we have, let me get this one out. We have this other news there. Brace for the U.S. economy to crash land as the banking turmoil creates a credit crunch, Alliance says. And what do they say again? The U.S. economy is going to crash land into a recession in the second half of 2023, according to Alliance. And so, yeah, keep in mind that some things might happen so swiftly they don't give you time to react. Okay, and maybe everybody knows what to do with their money. I guess you may not want to keep it in a bank. Maybe under your pillow, gold, diamonds, whatever you want to. Maybe buy oil from the Russians at a cheap price, whatever. But
Buy carrots.
yeah, but maybe it's not a good deal to have it in the banks. Keep that in mind.